I never believed in haunted houses, not really. Ghost stories were fun around campfires, sure, but I always figured they were just that, stories. That was before I moved into the old boarding house on Maple Street. The kind of place you rent when you're desperate, when you've spent the last of your savings and your car's transmission dies 2 blocks from nowhere. The building looked ordinary enough from the outside, a narrow 3-story house squeezed between 2 modern apartment blocks like a relic from another time. The landlord, a short man named Mr. Dwyer, had shown me around with a cigarette hanging from his lips and the kind of expression that said he didn't care if I rented the place or not. The rooms were small but clean, the rent cheap, and that was enough for me. But there was one thing he said right before I signed the lease that stuck with me. "Don't open the red door at the end of the hallway," he said, his voice flat as if reciting a rule he'd repeated 100 times before. I remember laughing, thinking it was a joke. But Mr. Dwyer didn't laugh. He just looked at me with tired eyes, exhaled smoke, and said again, slower this time, "Never open it." I thought about asking why, but his expression told me I wouldn't get a straight answer. I figured it was probably some maintenance thing. Maybe the door led to an electrical panel or an unused storage room. I didn't think much about it then. I should have. The red door was on the top floor at the far end of the hallway outside my room. Faded maroon paint chipped away near the handle, and a tarnished brass knob reflected the dim light from the single flickering bulb above it. The door didn't fit quite right in its frame, and when the wind blew through the building, I sometimes heard it rattle softly, like something on the other side was moving. The first few nights everything felt normal enough. The walls were thin, and I could hear my neighbors' footsteps or muffled conversations through them. There was an old man who coughed a lot down the hall, a woman who played old records late at night, and someone who always seemed to be pacing 2 floors below me. But the red door, that door made me uneasy even when I tried to ignore it. Every night when I came home from my shift at the diner, I'd walk past it on my way to my room. And every night I'd swear I felt it watching me. That sounds ridiculous, I know. A door can't watch you, but there was a kind of weight to it, like it absorbed the light around it. Even when I walked faster, the air seemed thicker near it, colder. One night, about a week after moving in, I woke up to a sound. It was soft, barely audible at first, a kind of rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was someone knocking on a neighbor's door. But when I sat up, the sound came again, clearer this time. Tap, tap, and it was coming from the hallway. I got out of bed and opened my door, peering out into the dim light. The hallway stretched out long and empty, the single bulb above flickering weakly. Everything was silent except for that same tapping sound. I realized with a chill crawling up my spine that it was coming from the red door. 3 slow taps, then silence. I stood there frozen, my hand gripping the doorknob of my own room. I don't know how long I stayed like that, listening, waiting for it to happen again. But it didn't. The hallway stayed still. Eventually, I convinced myself it had been the pipes or the old wood settling. This building was ancient after all. The next morning, I mentioned it to Mr. Dwyer when I saw him outside. He was sitting on the front steps smoking, as always. "Hey, Mr. Dwyer," I said. "You sure there's no one behind that red door? I heard something last night." He froze mid-drag, the cigarette trembling slightly between his fingers. Then he shook his head. "Ain't nobody in there," he muttered. "That door stays closed." "Yeah, but..." He cut me off with a look that was half warning, half pity. "I told you not to open it," he said. Then he turned and walked inside, leaving me standing there in the morning chill with a pit in my stomach. That night, the tapping came again. Louder this time, tap, 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 then a pause. Then 3 more, quicker, like something impatient. I pressed my ear to my door, heart pounding. The sound was definitely coming from the red door. I thought about calling out, asking who was there, but something deep inside me told me not to. It wasn't just fear, it was instinct. The tapping stopped. Then faintly I heard something else, a whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but it was soft and steady, like someone murmuring right on the other side of the wood. My mouth went dry. The air felt heavy, cold enough to sting my skin. I stepped back, shut my door, and locked it. I didn't sleep that night. The next day I asked my neighbor, the woman with the old records, if she'd heard anything. Her name was Lillian. She looked at me for a long moment before shaking her head. "No," she said, then hesitated. "You shouldn't be asking about that door." "Why not?" "Because people who ask don't stay long." I tried to laugh it off, but her eyes, clouded and distant, didn't match her tone. She turned and went back inside before I could say anything else. That was when I noticed something strange. The floor in front of the red door had changed. There were marks on it, thin, dark scratches, as if something had been dragged across the wood from underneath. I stared at them for a long time, my chest tightening. Then I did the only thing that felt safe. I went back inside, locked my door, and turned up the volume on my phone until I couldn't hear the hallway anymore. But that night, even through the noise, I swore I heard a voice whisper my name. The next few days passed in a kind of anxious blur. I told myself I'd imagined the whispering, that exhaustion had played tricks on me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with that hallway, like the air itself was infected. Every time I walked past the red door, I felt the same cold weight settle on my chest. Then, one evening after my shift, I came home to find the hallway darker than usual. The bulb above the red door had burned out, leaving that end of the hall in shadow. The rest of the light still worked fine, only that one was dead. As I approached, I noticed something else. The door wasn't fully closed. It was open maybe half an inch, just enough for a sliver of blackness to show through. My stomach twisted. I stopped halfway down the hall, staring at it. There was no sound, no movement, just that silent, impossible gap. I wanted to believe Mr. Dwyer had finally gone in there for maintenance or something. But then I saw the dust on the floor, undisturbed except for the faintest trace of footprints, bare footprints, leading out from the red door and stopping halfway down the hallway, right before my room. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to look closer. The prints were small, almost child-sized, but the shape was off. The toes were too long, and the spacing between them was uneven, as if whoever or whatever had left them didn't know how to walk right. I swallowed hard and took a step back. The air felt colder near the prints, heavy with a faint metallic smell like old blood. I turned and went straight to Mr. Dwyer's office on the ground floor. He was sitting behind his cluttered desk reading a newspaper. When I told him what I'd seen, his expression didn't change. He just stared at me, then slowly folded the paper. "Are you sure it was open?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "And there were footprints." He slammed his hand down on the desk, making me jump. "Don't go near it again," he snapped. "Do you understand? That door stays closed. If you see it open, you come get me. Don't touch it." His voice was low but sharp, almost pleading underneath the anger. I nodded, too startled to argue. That night I locked my door, shoved a chair under the handle, and tried to sleep. Around midnight I heard it again. The tapping. But this time it wasn't steady. It was frantic. Tap, 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 then silence. Then a low scrape like something dragging across the wood. I sat up in bed holding my breath. The scraping stopped, then came the whispering again, closer, clearer now. "Let me in." My blood ran cold. The voice was small, childlike, trembling. I told myself it had to be a dream, that maybe someone was playing a prank. But when I looked toward my door, I saw a shadow under it, 2 small feet unmoving. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The voice came again, softer. "Please. I'm cold." I wanted to scream, to tell it to go away, but my throat locked up. After what felt like hours, the shadow shifted, turning away. The sound of footsteps, bare and light, moved slowly back down the hallway. Then silence. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I found something under my door. A folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I picked it up. The paper was yellowed and brittle, edges torn like it had been ripped from an old notebook. There was a single line written on it in uneven handwriting. "Don't believe him," that's all it said. I didn't know who "him" was supposed to be. Mr. Dwyer? The voice in the hall? Someone else entirely. But I couldn't stop staring at the note. The shaky letters pressed so deep they nearly tore the page. I decided to confront Dwyer again that evening. When I got to his office, though, the door was locked. The old woman, Lillian, passed me in the hall and paused when she saw the note in my hand. "Did you get one?" she asked quietly. My mouth went dry. "You've seen these before?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder, then nodded. "They come when the door wakes up." "The door wakes up?" She didn't answer right away. "Sometimes it's quiet for months, years even. Then one day someone hears it. The tapping starts. The whispers follow. And then..." She trailed off, her eyes distant. "Someone disappears." I felt a chill ripple through me. "Disappear? You mean they move out?" Lillian looked up, and for the first time I saw real fear in her face. "No," she whispered. "They're just gone." Before I could ask more, she shuffled away down the stairs, clutching her shawl tight. That night I stayed awake, sitting in bed with every light on. The hallway outside was quiet, too quiet. I kept my eyes fixed on the crack beneath my door, watching for shadows. For hours, nothing happened. Then, sometime around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. No number, just a blank caller ID. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. I lifted it to my ear and froze. There was breathing on the other end, slow, deliberate, ragged. Then, in that same trembling voice I'd heard before, "Why didn't you open it?" My heart pounded so hard I thought I might pass out. I hung up, threw the phone across the bed, and pressed my back against the wall, staring at the door. A moment later, I heard it again. The tapping. Tap, tap, tap. But this time it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside my room. I turned slowly toward the closet. The door was closed, but a faint sound came from behind it, soft and steady. Tap, tap, tap. I couldn't move. Every muscle in my body locked in place. The tapping stopped, and then, in a whisper so faint I could barely hear it, the voice said, "You shouldn't have listened." Something scraped inside the closet, low and wet, like nails dragging on wood. The bulb above me flickered once, twice, and then went out. The room fell into total darkness. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat closed up, my lungs burned, and for a moment I thought I might just stop breathing altogether. I sat frozen in that darkness, listening to the thing inside my closet move. It wasn't loud, not like someone rummaging or walking, but subtle. A faint shifting sound like fabric sliding against wood. Then came a whisper, closer than before. "You're awake." I bolted out of bed, fumbling for the lamp on my nightstand. My hand trembled so violently that when I found the switch, I nearly knocked the whole thing over. The bulb flared to life, flooding the room with harsh yellow light. The closet door was still shut. For a long time, I just stared at it, waiting for it to move, waiting for something to burst out. But nothing did. Slowly, I forced myself closer, one step at a time. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I reached for the handle, hesitated, and then yanked the door open. The closet was empty. No sound, no movement, no sign of anything that could have made that noise. I grabbed my phone from the bed. Its screen cracked where it had hit the wall and checked the time. 3:17 a.m. I stayed awake until dawn, sitting in the corner with the lamp on, eyes fixed on that closet. When the first light of morning crept through the blinds, I finally let out a shaky breath and tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. That morning I went downstairs again, but Mr. Dwyer wasn't in his office. His door was open this time. The newspaper still spread across his desk and a half-empty coffee mug beside it. It looked like he'd just stepped out. Lillian was in the hallway watering the plants that lined the windowsill. When she saw me, she gave a small shake of her head. "You heard it again, didn't you?" I didn't even bother to deny it. "What is it, Lillian? What's behind that door?" She set down her watering can with trembling hands. "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do," I said. "Because it's not going away." For a long time, she just stared at me. Then she sighed and whispered, "It was a child once. That stopped me cold." "What?" "Years ago, before you or I ever came here, a little boy lived in this house with his mother. They say he went missing one winter night. No one ever found him. But after that, strange things started happening. Doors slamming on their own, whispers in the walls. The owner back then, she sealed the door and painted it red." "Why red?" "Old superstition," she said. "Red keeps the dead from crossing over." Or so they believed. I felt a chill spread through me. But if that's true, what happens if it opens? Lillian's eyes darkened. "It means he's awake again." Before I could ask anything else, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there in silence. The rest of the day dragged by in a haze. Every creak, every gust of wind made me jump. That night I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in bed, lights on, staring at the door. The hallway outside was quiet, but I could feel something moving beyond it, like static in the air. Around midnight, my phone buzzed again. No number, just that same blank screen. I didn't answer. I turned it face down on the bed and tried to ignore it. Then a minute later, there was a knock at my door. 3 sharp knocks. I froze. The sound wasn't from the red door down the hall this time. It was my door. Someone or something was standing right outside. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The knocks came again, softer this time. Then a voice. "It's me, Dwyer, open up." Relief washed over me for half a second. I got up, unlocked the door, and opened it. The hallway was empty. No one there. Just the flickering bulb overhead and the red door at the far end sealed shut again. I felt my skin crawl. Slowly, I closed the door, locked it, and pressed my back against it. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't pick it up. This time I let it ring. After a while, it stopped. Silence settled in again, heavy and absolute. I must have sat there for an hour before I heard it. A soft creak from the hallway, like someone stepping on an old board. Then another. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. I could see the shadow beneath it again, small feet, unmoving. The handle turned once, gently testing the lock. Then the whisper came, low and pleading. "Please, I'm cold." I wanted to tell it to go away, to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. Then something new happened. From the other side of the door, I heard a faint scratching, like nails or fingertips dragging slowly down the wood. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I stumbled backward, knocking into my chair, my breath coming in short gasps. The scratching stopped, but the air in the room grew colder, heavy enough to make my breath visible. I reached for my phone again and called Dwyer's number. No answer. The whisper came once more, louder this time. "You shouldn't have listened." That was when I realized it wasn't coming from the hallway anymore. It was coming from inside the walls. The sound slid across the plaster like something crawling through the pipes, moving closer, circling the room. I could hear it right behind the bed, then near the closet, then above the ceiling, and then all at once everything stopped. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in the corner until the sun came up, every muscle trembling. When I finally opened the door, the hallway looked the same as always, empty, silent, lifeless. Except for one thing. There were fingerprints on the red door. Small, smudged prints, as if someone had pressed their hands against it from the inside. And next to them, in faint smeared letters, a single word: run. I stood there staring at that single word, run, until my legs started to shake. It wasn't paint. It wasn't ink. The letters were darker than either, crusted and uneven, like they'd been drawn with something thicker. Blood. I backed away slowly, my breath coming in shallow bursts. Every instinct screamed for me to leave, to grab my things and get out, but I couldn't move. My body felt locked in place, then the air shifted. I can't explain it better than that. One second the hallway was still, the next it felt alive, humming with energy like the whole building was breathing. The light above me flickered, dimmed, and went out completely. From somewhere behind the red door came a sound. Not tapping this time. Not whispering. A low, drawn-out moan that didn't sound human. It was wet, rattling, as if whatever was on the other side was struggling to speak through water. I ran. I didn't even think about it. I turned and sprinted down the hallway, past the other rooms, down the stairs, and out the front door into the freezing night air. I didn't stop running until I was halfway down the block. I spent the night in a cheap motel across town. The next morning, after barely an hour of restless sleep, I went back to the boarding house. I told myself I'd grab my stuff and leave for good. But when I got there, something was wrong. The front door was wide open, swaying slightly in the wind. Inside, the lobby was empty. The place felt abandoned. Dust hung in the air and a faint smell of rot lingered. I called out for Mr. Dwyer, but there was no answer. I climbed the stairs slowly, my footsteps echoing. Every door I passed was open, rooms stripped bare. The furniture was gone, the curtains torn down. It looked like no one had lived there in years. When I reached the third floor, my heart nearly stopped. The wallpaper was different, peeling and yellowed with age. The light fixture was missing. And the red door, it was gone, not open, not destroyed, just gone. There was nothing but a blank section of wall where it should have been. I stood there staring, my mind reeling. This couldn't be the same hallway. But it was. My room number was still there, 102, my name still taped to the door in my handwriting. I reached for it with a shaking hand, opened it, and stepped inside. Everything was where I'd left it. My bed, my suitcase, even the cracked phone on the nightstand. But something about the room felt wrong. The air was stale, thick with dust, as if it had been sealed for decades. I checked my phone, no signal. The battery was somehow full, though I hadn't charged it. The time read 3 a.m. exactly. That was when I heard the footsteps again. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I peeked through the crack in the door. The hallway was darker than before, shadows pooling like ink along the walls. The sound grew closer, bare feet slapping softly against the floorboards. And then I saw him. A small figure standing where the red door used to be. Pale skin stretched tight over thin bones, head tilted slightly to one side. His eyes were black, bottomless pits that seemed to swallow the dim light around him. He was wearing what looked like an old-fashioned nightshirt, torn and stained. He smiled when he saw me watching. "Why did you run?" he asked in that same trembling voice I'd heard through the door. I slammed my door shut and stumbled backward. My mind raced. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But the sound of his footsteps outside told me otherwise. He was moving toward my room. The knob rattled once, twice, then stopped. Silence, then softly the whisper came again. "You opened it." I backed into the corner, clutching my phone like it was a weapon. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but the screen only showed static. Lines of white and gray flickering across the glass. Then words began to form on the display, one letter at a time. "Let me in." I dropped the phone. The door handle twisted violently, shaking in its socket. The wood creaked, splintering around the lock. I could hear the child on the other side breathing hard, like each inhale was scraping his throat raw. Then he spoke again, voice breaking. "You said you'd help me." "I never," I started, but my voice cracked, swallowed by the noise of the door shuttering. Then, as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. I stood there for a long time, waiting. Minutes passed. Finally, I crept forward and pressed my ear against the door. Nothing. No footsteps. No whispers. Just silence. When I opened it, the hallway was empty again. The wallpaper looked newer now, freshly painted. The red door was back, perfectly intact, as if it had never vanished. But there was something different about it this time. A faint sound coming from behind it, soft rhythmic breathing. I reached out almost without thinking, my hand hovering over the knob. The air around it pulsed faintly, warm against my skin. I should have turned and run again. I knew that. But something about the sound, the steady, almost human breath, drew me closer. My fingers brushed the metal. The air went still. Then, from behind the door came a single deliberate knock. Just one. I jerked my hand back. My heart pounded in my ears. The light above flickered once more and then held steady. Everything looked normal again. I told myself I'd imagined it, that my mind was unraveling after too many sleepless nights. But when I stepped back, I saw something that made my stomach twist. The door was no longer red. It was black. When I saw that the door was black, something in me broke. It wasn't painted, no. The surface absorbed light like a void pressed into the wall. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the shadows, but the longer I stared, the darker it became. The texture looked wrong too, rippling faintly like it was breathing. I took a step back. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions now, far longer than it should have been. Every bulb along the ceiling buzzed faintly, their light pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. I turned toward the stairs, but they were gone. Where the stairwell had been was now just another stretch of hallway, lined with the same endless doors, all identical except for that one at the end. The black one. I started to run. My shoes pounded against the warped boards as I passed room after room. The doors all rattled as I went by, as if something inside each one wanted out. My chest burned, breath shallow, panic clawing at my throat. When I finally stopped, bent double and gasping, I looked up, and there it was again, the black door, waiting. No matter which direction I ran, the hallway only looped back to it. My mind scrambled for logic. Sleep deprivation, gas leak, hallucination, anything but what my eyes showed me. But when I pressed my hand to the wall, it was warm, pulsing faintly beneath my palm like there was something alive behind it. Then, from behind the black door, I heard whispering. Not the child's voice this time, many voices. Men, women, children, all murmuring in a low, chaotic chorus. I couldn't make out words, just a rising and falling hum that made the floorboards tremble. My hand moved on its own. The knob was ice cold now, so cold it burned my skin. I gripped it, but before I could turn, the voices stopped. Silence pressed in around me, thick and heavy. And then a single voice, deep and hollow, spoke from the other side. You were chosen. I stumbled back, shaking my head. No, I didn't, but the voice cut me off. You opened it once. You belong to us now. The door shuddered, a deep groan echoing through the wood. The floor beneath my feet rippled, softening like wet clay. I tried to move, but my shoes sank into the boards as if the house itself were swallowing me. Then the door began to open. Slowly. The gap widened just an inch. But the darkness that poured from it wasn't normal. It spilled like liquid shadow crawling across the floor, swallowing the faint light of the bulbs. The cold hit me next, biting through my clothes, stealing my breath. I fought to pull my legs free, but the floor held me tight. The darkness reached my ankles, rising like a tide. Within it, faint shapes writhed, hands, faces, mouths opening in silent screams. "Stop," I choked out. "Please." The door halted, half open. From within that void, something stepped forward. It was tall, impossibly thin, its body bent at odd angles like it had been broken and stitched back together. Its face was featureless except for the mouth, a gash stretching from ear to ear filled with jagged, uneven teeth. But the worst part wasn't its shape. It was the feeling that it wasn't looking at me, it was looking through me. "Let me in," it whispered, voice echoing with countless others beneath it. "You've already invited me," I screamed and yanked my legs upward with all my strength. The wood tore like flesh as I stumbled backward. The door slammed shut instantly, the sound echoing down the endless hallway. Silence. Then, as if none of it had happened, the lights brightened. The door was red again, normal, solid. My legs trembled as I pressed against the opposite wall, chest heaving. My shoes were covered in black residue like ash. My hands shook uncontrollably. Somehow the stairs had returned. Without thinking, I bolted down them, burst through the front door, and didn't stop running until I reached the street. The world outside looked wrong. The air was still, soundless. No traffic, no wind. Every window I passed was dark, every car empty. Then I saw the sign for the boarding house. It read, "Closed since 1979. My mind went blank. I turned in a slow circle, trying to understand. Buildings around me looked aged, windows boarded, paint flaking. The streetlights were rusted, the road cracked and uneven. I stumbled toward the nearest intersection, hoping to find someone, anyone. But the entire town looked deserted. I found a payphone and lifted the receiver. Dead. Not even static. I slammed it down, heart racing, and looked back toward the direction I'd come from. The boarding house was gone. In its place stood a row of dead trees, their branches curling like skeletal hands toward the sky. The ground where the house should have been was sunken, blackened as if burned. I stood there for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of it all, until I saw movement among the trees. A figure, small, stepping between the trunks. It was the boy. He stopped just at the edge of the clearing and raised his head. Even from a distance, I could see his mouth move. Though I couldn't hear him, I knew exactly what he said. "Run." My body reacted before my mind did. I turned and ran again, not caring where, just away. The landscape around me shifted as I moved. Streets bending, buildings warping, everything dissolving into darkness. I don't remember how long I ran. At some point, exhaustion took over and I collapsed. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a hospital bed. A nurse was standing beside me, clipboard in hand. She looked startled to see me awake. "You're lucky to be alive," she said softly. "You were found unconscious near the old Pine Hollow property. It's been abandoned for decades." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. "The boarding house?" Her brow furrowed. "There hasn't been a boarding house there since the fire. That place burned down in 1979. My stomach turned to ice. I tried to sit up, but she gently pressed me back. "Rest," she said. "You're safe now." But as she turned to leave, I noticed something on the door to my hospital room. A small, faint mark. a red circle drawn right above the handle, and from the other side, just as the lights dimmed, came a single soft knock. That knock on the hospital door froze me. It wasn't loud, but it carried something behind it, a weight that made the air feel colder. I stared at the red circle above the handle, the lines slightly uneven as if drawn hastily. My first thought was that someone was playing a cruel joke. My second thought was that the door in the boarding house had followed me. I pressed the nurse call button. No response. I pressed it again, nothing. The hallway outside was silent, too silent for a hospital. No voices, no footsteps, not even the hum of machines. Just stillness. Then, another knock. Softer this time. Slower. I reached for the remote to call someone, but the television turned on instead. The screen flickered, showing static. For a moment I thought I saw a shape in the static. Tall, black, with a wide grin that didn't belong to any human face. Then, just as quickly, the image vanished, replaced by a single line of text. "You shouldn't have opened it." My breath caught in my throat. I tore the plug from the wall, but the screen stayed on, the message burning faintly through the static. The knock came again, louder now. The handle jiggled once, twice, then stopped. I could hear breathing on the other side, slow, steady, patient. I pulled my knees up on the bed, eyes fixed on the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low creak, the door began to open on its own. I wanted to scream for help, but no sound came out. My voice was gone. My body refused to move. The door swung open a few inches, just enough for me to see into the hallway. Empty. No one there. I forced myself to stand, my legs trembling under me, and crept toward the doorway. The hall lights flickered as I stepped into the corridor. Every room I passed was dark. Beds empty. Monitors off. The hospital was dead. When I reached the nurse's station, I found papers scattered across the floor. A cup of coffee spilled and dried long ago. Dust covered everything, thick and undisturbed. It was as if no one had been there in years. That's when I saw the elevator at the end of the hall. Its doors were open, light spilling out a faint red glow. Every instinct screamed to stay away, but my feet kept moving. The light wasn't natural. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and rhythmic. When I reached the elevator, I hesitated. Inside, the walls were covered in something dark. I leaned closer, realizing with horror that it was the same substance that had covered my shoes in the boarding house. The black residue glistening faintly. There were only 2 buttons on the panel, 1 and B. The button for the basement flickered faintly. I don't know why I pressed it. Maybe I wanted answers. Maybe I'd already lost control of my own choices. The doors slid shut and the elevator began to descend. Slowly. Painfully slow. I could hear something moving in the shaft above me, dragging along the metal walls. A faint whisper began to build around me, familiar voices overlapping, indistinct. They grew louder as the elevator descended, echoing like a chorus in a cavern. Then, just before the elevator stopped, one voice rose above the rest. The same child's voice, "You can't leave now." The doors opened, the hallway before me was narrow and cold. The walls were rough stone dripping with moisture. Dim emergency lights lined the ceiling, but most were dead, leaving stretches of shadow between the pools of faint light. I stepped out. The air was thick with decay, heavy and damp. The floor was slick beneath my shoes. Then I saw it. At the end of the hallway stood another door. Red, but not like before. This one wasn't painted, it was covered in something organic, like layers of muscle and skin stretched tight over bone. It pulsed faintly as though alive. I could hear whispers coming from it, pleading, crying, hundreds of voices overlapping in pain. I should have turned back, but I didn't. I was drawn to it, pulled forward by some force that felt older than me, older than the world. Halfway down the hallway, the lights behind me began to shut off one by one. Each time they flickered out, the darkness grew thicker, heavier, until I could feel it pressing against my back. When I reached the door,